The first time I walked into the Whitmore mansion, I knew I didn't belong. I could feel it before anyone even said a word. The marble floors beneath my worn-out shoes, the crystal chandeliers hanging above me, the expensive paintings covering the walls. Everything about that house screamed wealth. And everything about me screamed that I was different. I looked down at my simple black dress and tried to hide the small tear near the sleeve. It was the nicest dress I owned. My mother had spent weeks saving money so I could buy it. She had held it up with a proud smile and told me, "Lena, never be ashamed of where you come from. A person's value is not measured by the clothes they wear." I believed her. I really did. But standing inside that mansion, surrounded by people who had never worried about paying rent or choosing between food and electricity, I started to wonder if the world saw things differently. I was 19 years old. I came from a small apartment on the edge of the city. My mother raised me alone after my father left when I was young. We didn't have much, but we had love, and we had dreams. I worked after school. I studied late at night. I saved every dollar I could. I believed that if I worked hard enough, one day I could build a better life. Then I met Adrian Whitmore, and for the first time in my life, I believed maybe I didn't have to do everything alone. I still remember the day we met. It was raining heavily. I was sitting inside a small cafe, trying to finish my university assignment while working a shift. My hair was messy, my clothes were damp, and I was exhausted. I didn't even notice him at first. A tall man in a perfectly tailored suit walked into the cafe and sat at the table beside mine. He looked like someone who belonged in magazines, someone who belonged in a world far away from mine. Then my papers flew off the table. The wind from the open door scattered my notes across the floor. I immediately panicked. Those papers contained weeks of work. Before I could even stand up, he was already picking them up. "You dropped these," he said. I looked up, and for a moment, I forgot what I was going to say, because he smiled. Not the kind of fake smile rich people gave when they were being polite. A real smile. "You look like you're about to fight the entire world over those papers," he joked. I laughed. I might have to. They took me 3 weeks. He handed them back to me. "I'm Adrian. Lena." And that was how it started. A simple conversation, a random meeting, a moment that changed my entire life. Adrian was different from what I expected. He didn't care that I wasn't wealthy. He didn't ask about my family's money. He didn't look down on my job. He listened. He remembered small things. He would bring me coffee during my late-night study sessions. He would sit with me in cheap restaurants instead of expensive ones. He told me he admired how hard I worked. "You know what I like about you?" he asked me one night. We were sitting on a bench outside the university. "What?" "You don't act like you need anyone to save you." I smiled. Maybe because nobody ever came to save me. He looked at me seriously. "Then let me be the person who stays." Those words meant everything to me, because I believed him. I believed Adrian Whitmore loved me. For 2 years, we kept our relationship a secret. Not because I was ashamed of him, because he was afraid of his family. At first, I didn't understand. I thought maybe they were just strict. Maybe they were old-fashioned. Maybe they needed time. I was wrong. The first time Adrian brought me home, I learned exactly what they thought of me. The moment we entered the dining room, his mother looked me up and down. She didn't even try to hide her disappointment. "This is her?" I felt my stomach tighten. Adrian immediately reached for my hand. "Mom, this is Lena." His mother smiled, but it wasn't a kind smile. It was the kind of smile people give before they hurt you. Interesting. I forced myself to stay calm. "It's nice to meet you, Mrs. Whitmore." She looked at my clothes, then at my shoes, then back at my face. "I suppose Adrian has always had a habit of helping people." I knew exactly what she meant, but I pretended I didn't. Dinner was the longest night of my life. Every conversation reminded me that I was different. They talked about vacations I could never afford, businesses I'd never heard of, places I had only seen online. I sat quietly, trying to prove I belonged. But deep down, I knew they had already decided who I was. A poor girl, a temporary mistake, someone who would never be good enough. After dinner, Adrian's mother asked to speak with me alone. I followed her into the library. She closed the door. Then she placed an envelope on the table. I stared at it. What is this? Money. I looked up. Why? Because you seem like an intelligent young woman, Lena. I'm sure you understand what I'm saying. My heart sank. You want me to leave, Adrian. She didn't deny it. Adrian has a future, a reputation, a family name to protect. And I'm what? She looked at me coldly. You are a distraction. Those words hurt more than I expected, because they came from someone who didn't know anything about me, someone who decided my worth before knowing my story. I love him, I whispered. She shook her head. Love does not change reality. That night, I left the mansion with tears in my eyes, but the worst part wasn't what his mother said. It was what happened next. Adrian found me outside. I expected him to defend me. I expected him to tell me he didn't care what his family thought. Instead, he stood there silently. You heard everything? I asked. He looked away. Lena. No. My voice cracked. Tell me you don't believe what she said. He said nothing. And that silence destroyed me, because sometimes the person who hurts you the most isn't the person who attacks you. It's the person who watches it happen and does nothing. I took off the necklace he gave me, the one I wore every day. I placed it in his hand. I thought you loved me. I do. Then why am I the only one fighting for us? He had no answer, and that was when I realized something. Love was not enough, not when one person was willing to lose everything, and the other was afraid to lose comfort. I walked away from Adrian Whitmore that night. I walked away from the richest family I had ever known. I walked away with nothing but my broken heart and the promise I made to myself. I would never let anyone make me feel small again. They thought they had rejected a poor girl. They thought they had removed a problem from their perfect world. They had no idea what they had just created, because that night, the girl who wanted to be accepted disappeared. And the woman who would one day make them regret everything began to rise. For a long time, I believed the hardest part of losing Adrian was losing him. I was wrong. The hardest part was realizing that the person I trusted most had chosen to let me walk away. I spent the first few weeks pretending I was fine. I went to university. I went to work. I smiled when people spoke to me. I acted like my heart wasn't broken, but every night, when I returned to my small apartment and closed the door behind me, I felt the weight of everything I had lost. I missed him. I hated admitting that. I missed the way he used to call me just to hear my voice. I missed the way he made ordinary moments feel special. I missed believing that someone like him could actually choose someone like me. But slowly, I started understanding something. I wasn't only grieving Adrian. I was grieving the version of myself who believed love alone could fix everything. A month after I left the Whitmore mansion, Adrian called me. I stared at his name, lighting up my phone. My heart immediately reacted before my mind could. For a moment, I wanted to answer. I wanted to hear him say he was sorry. I wanted him to tell me he had finally chosen me. But then I remembered standing outside that mansion, remembered the silence, remembered feeling completely alone. I let the phone stop ringing. He called again and again. But I didn't answer, because I knew if I heard his voice, I might run back to the same person who had already let me go. A few days later, he showed up at my apartment. I opened the door and saw him standing there. For the first time, he didn't look like the confident heir of the Whitmore empire. He looked tired, lost. Lena, I stepped back. "What are you doing here?" "I need to talk to you." I almost laughed. Talk. That was easy for him to say. "About what?" "About us." I looked at him. Is there still an us? His expression changed, because he knew the answer. I made a mistake. I swallowed the pain rising in my chest. "No, Adrian." He looked confused. "No? You didn't make a mistake." I shook my head. "You made a choice." The room became silent. "You chose your family." He looked down. I was scared. And I wasn't? My voice broke. "I was standing in front of your family while they treated me like I was worthless. I was scared too." He stepped closer. "I love you." I closed my eyes. Those words used to make me feel safe. Now they only reminded me of everything that hurt. Love isn't just something you say when it's easy. I looked at him. Love is what you do when it's hard. He had no answer. And that was the moment I knew. I had already lost him. After Adrian left, I made a decision. I was done begging people to see my worth. I was done trying to prove I deserved a place at someone else's table. If I wanted a seat, I would build my own table. That night, I opened my old laptop, the same broken laptop I had used throughout university. I looked through all the ideas I had written down over the years: technology, business, innovation, dreams I had pushed aside because I was too busy surviving. One idea caught my attention. A software program I had been designing for years. A system that could help small businesses manage their operations without expensive corporate tools. Everyone told me it was unrealistic. Everyone told me companies like that already existed. But I saw something they didn't. I saw a problem that needed solving, and for the first time in months, I felt alive again. Building my company was not some magical transformation. It was painful. It was exhausting. There were nights I cried because I didn't know how I would pay rent. There were mornings I woke up wondering if I had made the biggest mistake of my life. I worked during the day. I coded at night. I drank too much coffee. I slept too little. I failed more times than I could count. But every time I wanted to quit, I remembered that mansion. I remembered their faces. I remembered being told I wasn't enough. And I turned that pain into motivation. 6 months later, I finally had something. Not millions, not success, just a working prototype, a small beginning. I showed it to investors. Most of them rejected me. Some wouldn't even take my meeting seriously. One investor looked at my presentation and smiled. "You're very talented, Lena." I waited for the compliment. Then he continued. "But talent doesn't change where you come from." His words reminded me of the Whitmores, but this time, something was different. I wasn't the same girl who walked into that mansion. I looked him directly in the eyes. Maybe not. I closed my laptop. But where I come from also taught me how hard I'm willing to fight. I left that meeting with another rejection, but I also left knowing something. I was no longer asking for permission. A year later, everything changed. A small technology company finally agreed to invest in my idea. They didn't see a poor girl. They saw potential. They saw my work. They saw my vision. And slowly, my dream became reality. My small office became bigger. My team grew. The company that started from my tiny apartment became something people were beginning to notice. The same people who ignored me started asking questions. Who was Lena Carter? Where did she come from? How did she build something so successful? But I wasn't thinking about them anymore. I was focused on building the future I always dreamed of. Then, one morning, 3 years after I left Adrian, I saw the headline that changed everything. Whitmore Industries faces major financial crisis. I stared at the article on my screen. The company that had once represented power, the family that believed they were untouchable. They were falling, and I knew something they didn't. The world had a strange way of bringing people back together, because just as the Whitmores were losing everything, my company was reaching the top. For years, they believed I was the person who needed them. They were wrong. Soon, they would need me, and they would have to face the girl they once rejected. Only this time, I wouldn't be standing in their mansion asking to be accepted. They would be standing at my door asking for a chance. 3 years. That was how long it had been since I walked away from the Whitmore family mansion. 3 years since I cried in my apartment, wondering how I would survive. 3 years since I was the girl everyone underestimated. But time had changed me. Not because I became someone else, because I finally became the person I was always meant to be. The morning I saw the headline about Whitmore Industries collapsing, I didn't feel happiness. I expected to. I thought maybe I would feel satisfaction. After everything they did to me, maybe part of me wanted to see them fall. But when I looked at the picture of their company building on my screen, I only felt something unexpected. Peace, because their downfall wasn't my victory. My victory was proving they were wrong about me. I didn't build my company because I wanted revenge. I built it because I refused to let anyone decide my future. My company, Carter Innovations, had grown faster than I ever imagined. The small office where I once worked alone had become a global technology company. I had employees who believed in my vision, investors who trusted my decisions, a team that respected me. Every person who worked beside me knew my story. They knew I started with nothing. They knew I'd been rejected. They knew I had failed. But they also knew I never gave up. My assistant, Maya, walked into my office carrying a tablet. "Your 9 o'clock meeting is ready." I looked up from my desk. "Who is it?" She hesitated. That small pause caught my attention. "Maya?" She placed the tablet in front of me. "The Whitmore Group." For a moment, I didn't move. I stared at the name on the screen, a name I hadn't heard in years, a name that once represented everything I thought I wanted. "What do they want?" Maya looked uncomfortable. "They're requesting a partnership." I almost smiled. A partnership. 3 years ago, they wouldn't even let me sit at their dinner table. Now they wanted a seat at mine. "Schedule the meeting." Maya looked surprised. "Are you sure?" I looked out the window at the city below. The same city where I once walked home crying because I couldn't afford a taxi. "Yes," I turned back to her. "Let them come." The day of the meeting arrived. I wore a black suit. Simple, elegant, powerful, not because I wanted to impress them, because I no longer needed to. When I walked into the conference room, everyone stood, not because they were afraid of me, because they respected me. That was something I'd spent years earning. I took my seat at the head of the table, the position I'd once dreamed of, the position nobody thought I would reach. Then the doors opened. And they walked in. Victoria Whitmore, Adrian Whitmore, and the rest of the family who once believed I wasn't good enough. For a moment, nobody spoke. I watched their faces change. Confusion, shock, disbelief, because they weren't looking at the 19-year-old girl they remembered. They were looking at the woman I had become. Victoria was the first to recover. "Lena." She said my name, like she was trying to convince herself it was real. I smiled politely. "Mrs. Whitmore." The silence became uncomfortable. Adrian looked at me differently, not the way he used to, not with love, with regret. I could see the questions in his eyes. How did you do this? How did you become this person? Why didn't I see it before? But I didn't answer questions he never asked. "Please sit." They took their seats. The same people who once made me feel small were now sitting across from me, waiting for my approval. Life had a strange sense of irony. The meeting began. Victoria explained their situation. Their company had lost major investors. Their competitors were gaining ground. They needed new technology to stay relevant. And my company had exactly what they needed. "Our research shows that Carter Innovations has developed the most advanced business management system in the industry," she said. I listened quietly. Then I asked, "Why me?" The room became silent. Victoria looked confused. "What do you mean?" 3 years ago, your family believed I wasn't good enough to be part of your world. I looked directly at her. Now, you're asking to be part of mine. Nobody spoke, because everyone knew I was right. Victoria adjusted herself. That was a long time ago? No. My voice remained calm. It was 3 years ago. I leaned back in my chair. Some things don't disappear just because people stop talking about them. Adrian finally spoke. Lena. I looked at him. Hearing my name from him still felt strange. I know I hurt you. I didn't respond. I should have stood up for you. Yes. The honesty surprised him, because I didn't pretend anymore. You should have. He looked down. I was young. So was I. I held his gaze, but I still had the courage to fight for us. The words hurt him. I could see it, but they were the truth. After the meeting ended, I expected them to leave. But Adrian stayed behind. I need to talk to you. I gathered my papers. I don't think that's necessary. Lena, please. I stopped, because there was a time when I would have done anything to hear those words. Now they meant nothing. You used to ask me to stay. I looked at him. Do you remember? He swallowed. Yes. I stayed when I was hurt. I picked up my folder, but you didn't. His eyes filled with regret. I was wrong. I nodded. Yes, you were. Then I walked away. That evening, I returned home and stood by my window. The city lights reflected against the glass. Years ago, I stood outside someone else's mansion, feeling like I had lost everything. Now, I stood in my own building, looking at everything I had created. I had spent years becoming someone they couldn't ignore, but I knew something. This was only the beginning, because the Whitmores didn't just need my company. They needed my help, and helping them would come with a price. Not money, not power, something much more important. The truth. They needed to understand that the girl they rejected was never worthless. They just weren't wise enough to see her value. The next morning, I received an unexpected message. A message from someone I never thought I would hear from again. Adrian, I need to tell you the truth about what happened that night. I stared at the words on my screen, because suddenly I realized something. Maybe the betrayal I knew about was only part of the story, and maybe the reason Adrian let me go was not the reason I thought. I stared at Adrian's message for a long time. I need to tell you the truth about what happened that night. 6 words. 6 words that somehow had the power to bring back memories I had spent years trying to bury. The night I left the Whitmore mansion. The night I realized I was not chosen. The night I walked away from the only person I thought would always stand beside me. For 3 years, I had told myself I knew the truth. Adrian was afraid. His family mattered more than I did. He chose comfort over love. That was the story I'd repeated in my mind every time I missed him. Every time I wondered what could have been. But now he was telling me there was more. And a part of me hated that I wanted to know. I didn't reply immediately. I had spent years rebuilding my life. I had built walls around the memories of Adrian Whitmore. Strong walls. Walls that protected me. And I wasn't sure if opening that door again was a mistake. Maya noticed something was wrong the next morning. She walked into my office and placed a coffee on my desk. You look like you haven't slept. I looked away from my computer. I got a message from Adrian. Her expression changed instantly. Adrian Whitmore? I nodded. The one who broke your heart? I smiled slightly. Straight to the point, as always. Maya crossed her arms. Lena, you don't owe him anything. I know. Then why are you thinking about meeting him? I looked out the window, because that was the question I'd been asking myself. Why did I care? Why did a part of me still want answers from someone who had already hurt me? Because I spent 3 years believing I knew the truth. I paused, and if there's something I don't know, I need to hear it. Maya sighed. Just promise me one thing. What? Don't forget who you became without him. I smiled. I won't. We met at a quiet cafe across the city. Not the same cafe where we first met. I chose somewhere different, a place that belonged to the new version of me. When Adrian walked in, I barely recognized him. Not because he looked different, because the confidence he once carried was gone. The man who used to walk through life like nothing could hurt him now looked like someone carrying years of regret. He sat across from me. Thank you for coming. I nodded. Tell me the truth. He looked down, and for a moment I saw the person I used to love. Not the wealthy heir, not the man who stayed silent, just Adrian. I never wanted to lose you. I stayed quiet. Then why did you? He took a deep breath. Because my mother threatened to destroy everything. I frowned. What does that mean? Adrian looked at me. She knew about us before I brought you home. I froze. What? She knew I was serious about you. He looked away. She knew I was planning to leave the family business and build a life with you. My heart tightened. Then why didn't you tell me? Because she threatened your future. The words hit me. What? Adrian continued. She told me if I refused to end things with you, she would make sure you never got a job in the industry. She would ruin your reputation before you even had a chance to start. I stared at him, trying to process everything. That's impossible. I wish it was. Adrian reached into his folder and placed several documents on the table. I looked at them. Emails, messages, records, evidence. My hands became still. My mother had people investigating you. I looked up. Investigating me. She wanted to find something she could use against you. My stomach turned. She thought you were after my family's money. A bitter laugh escaped me. Money. I shook my head. She knew nothing about me. I know. His voice was quiet. That was her mistake. I looked back at the documents. For years, I believed the Whitmores rejected me because I wasn't rich enough. But the truth was worse. They rejected me because they never bothered to know me. Why didn't you tell me? I asked again. This time my voice was softer. Adrian closed his eyes. Because I was a coward. The honesty surprised me. I thought I could protect you by pushing you away. I stared at him. You didn't protect me. My voice cracked. You destroyed me. I know. And you let me believe you didn't care. I know. His eyes were full of regret. I thought if you hated me, you would move on. I looked away, because part of me wanted to be angry, but another part of me remembered the boy who once made me laugh in a small cafe. The boy who held my hand when I was scared. The boy who promised he would stay. But that's not all, Adrian said. I looked at him. What do you mean? His expression changed. There was someone else involved. A cold feeling moved through me. Who? He hesitated. My cousin. I frowned. Ethan? Adrian nodded. He wanted control of the company. He knew I would inherit everything one day. My mind started connecting the pieces. He knew about us? Yes. And? He used it. Adrian explained everything. Ethan had convinced the family that I was a weakness, that I would ruin Adrian's future, that I was a distraction. He was the one who encouraged Victoria to confront me. He was the one who spread rumors about me inside the company. He wanted Adrian isolated, and he succeeded. I sat there silently. For years, I had carried the pain of believing I wasn't enough. But the truth was different. I wasn't rejected because I lacked value. I was rejected because people were afraid of what I could become. Adrian looked at me. I should have fought harder. I nodded. You should have. He accepted my answer. I'm sorry, Lena. 3 years ago, those words were all I wanted. Now they didn't fix anything. An apology couldn't erase the nights I cried alone. It couldn't give me back the years we lost. But maybe it could give me something else. The truth. When I returned to my office, I sat at my desk and looked at the city. Everything suddenly felt different. The Whitmores weren't just a family who looked down on me. They were a family hiding secrets. And someone inside that family had been willing to destroy anyone standing in their way, including me, including Adrian. My phone rang. It was an unknown number. I answered. Hello? Silence. Then a familiar voice spoke. Congratulations, Lena. My blood ran cold because I knew that voice. Ethan Whitmore. I always knew you were ambitious. I stood up. What do you want? A quiet laugh came through the phone. I wanted to see how far you would climb. My grip tightened around the phone. Why? His answer was simple. Because I need to know how difficult it will be to bring you back down. The call ended. And for the first time in years, I felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not sadness, not heartbreak, a warning. The people who once underestimated me were finally paying attention, but they still didn't understand something. I was no longer the girl they pushed away. I was the woman they created. And if they wanted a war, they were about to discover exactly what I was capable of. The morning after Ethan Whitmore's phone call, I woke up with one thought. He was coming for me, but what he didn't understand was something important. I was no longer the 19-year-old girl who stood outside the Whitmore mansion with tears in her eyes. I was no longer the girl who waited for someone else to defend her. I had spent 3 years building an empire, and I would not let anyone take it away from me. When I arrived at Carter Innovations that morning, I immediately noticed something was wrong. The atmosphere felt different. People were whispering. Employees were looking at their phones. My assistant, Maya, rushed toward me. Lena. I stopped. What happened? She handed me her tablet. A news article was open on the screen. My heart sank as I read the headline. Carter Innovations accused of stealing technology from former partner. For a moment, I couldn't breathe. Then I kept reading. Someone had released documents claiming my company had copied software from another company years ago. The accusations were completely false, but I knew exactly what this was. A distraction. A weapon. Ethan had made his first move. Maya. Yes? Find out who released this. She nodded. We're already investigating. I looked around my office. The place I built from nothing. The place where people believed in me. The place that represented every sacrifice I had made. I refused to let fear take over. Call a meeting with the legal team. Maya studied me. You're not worried. I looked at her. Of course I'm worried. I picked up the tablet, but being afraid doesn't mean I'm defeated. The next few days were a battle. The accusations spread quickly. News channels talked about my company. Online discussions questioned my success. People who once praised me suddenly wanted to know if I deserved it. It was strange how quickly people changed. One day, they celebrated your achievements. The next day, they waited for you to fall. But I had learned something from my past. People's opinions were temporary. My work was permanent. My legal team discovered something shocking. The evidence against me had been carefully created. Fake documents, manipulated records, false timestamps. Someone had spent a lot of time planning this. Someone who knew exactly where to attack. And then we found the connection. A company linked to Ethan Whitmore. I stared at the evidence in front of me. So it was true. He wasn't just trying to scare me, he was trying to destroy me. That afternoon, Adrian came to my office. When I saw him, I almost told security to remove him. Almost, but something stopped me. Maybe because this time, he looked different. He wasn't there as the man who broke my heart. He was there as someone who understood what was happening. I know about the accusations. I didn't look up from my papers. Of course you do. Lena. I finally looked at him. Did you come here to apologize again? His expression hurt. No. Then why are you here? Because Ethan did this. I leaned back. I know. Adrian looked surprised. You know? He made a mistake. What mistake? I smiled slightly. He forgot that I don't survive by luck. Adrian sat down. He's more dangerous than you think. I studied him. Why? Because Ethan has spent his entire life believing everything belongs to him. Adrian's voice became quieter. He doesn't care who he destroys. I thought about the phone call, the confidence in his voice, the way he spoke like my downfall was already guaranteed. What does he want? Adrian looked at me. Your company. I laughed softly. Of course. He believes if he destroys your reputation, your investors will leave. Your company will lose value. Then he can buy it for almost nothing. I nodded. It was exactly the kind of plan someone like Ethan would create. He didn't want to beat me. He wanted to own what I built. But Ethan made one mistake. He thought my company was just numbers, just technology, just money. He didn't understand what it represented. Every late night, every rejection, every moment I was told I wasn't good enough. Carter Innovations wasn't built from wealth. It was built from determination. And you couldn't buy that. I called an emergency meeting with my entire team. Everyone gathered in the main conference room. They looked worried. I understood why. Their jobs, their futures. Everything depended on what happened next. I stood at the front of the room. I know what everyone has heard. The room became silent. I know there are questions. I looked at every person. But I want you to remember something. I placed my hands on the table. This company was not built because everything went perfectly. It was built because we survived when things went wrong. A few people nodded. We are not going to hide. We are not going to panic. And we are not going to let someone who has never built anything destroy what we created. The room grew quieter. Then one person started clapping. Then another. Soon, everyone was standing. And for the first time in days, I felt the weight lift because I remembered something. I wasn't alone anymore. A week later, we made our move. Instead of defending ourselves quietly, we exposed everything. Our legal team revealed the false evidence, the financial connection between Ethan's company and the accusations, the manipulation, the plan. The media that once questioned me now started asking questions about him. The story changed, and Ethan was no longer the person attacking. He was the person being investigated. That night, I received another message, this time from Victoria Whitmore. We need to talk. I stared at the message. 3 years ago, she had offered me money to disappear. Now she was asking for my time. I almost ignored it, but something told me to answer. Where? Her reply came instantly. The Whitmore mansion. I looked at the message. The same mansion where I had walked in hoping to be accepted. The same place where I walked out feeling worthless. But this time, I wouldn't be entering as a girl asking for approval. I would be entering as the woman they needed. When I arrived at the mansion, Victoria was waiting, but she looked different, older, tired, defeated. Lena. I nodded. Mrs. Whitmore. She looked uncomfortable hearing me call her that. I owe you an apology. I remained silent. She took a breath. I was wrong about you. I looked around the room, the same room where I once felt invisible. You were. She looked down. I thought you would ruin Adrian's future. And now? Her voice became quiet. Now I realize you were the only person capable of saving ours. I said nothing, because those words were exactly what I had waited years to hear, but they came too late. Then Victoria handed me a folder. What is this? Proof. I opened it. And what I saw made my heart stop. Documents, financial records, hidden agreements, evidence that Ethan had been planning his takeover for years. But there was something else. Something that changed everything. A document with my name on it. A document from 3 years ago. The night I left, I looked at Victoria. What is this? Her eyes filled with regret. Something I should have shown you a long time ago? I opened the document, and as I read the first page, I realized the betrayal was much bigger than I ever imagined, because the truth wasn't just that Ethan tried to destroy me. The truth was, he had been planning to destroy the entire Whitmore family from the beginning. I stared at the document in my hands. For a moment, I forgot how to breathe. The room around me disappeared. The mansion, the furniture, the memories, everything faded, because the words in front of me changed everything I thought I knew. Whitmore Industries Succession Agreement. Beneficiary: Adrian Whitmore. Secondary beneficiary: Lena Carter. I looked up slowly. What is this? Victoria didn't answer immediately. For the first time since I met her, she looked afraid. Not of me, of the truth. This was your future. I frowned. My future? She nodded. 3 years ago, before everything happened, Adrian's father discovered your work. I looked back at the document. He knew about my company idea. Yes. Victoria sat down. He saw what Adrian saw. He saw that you were brilliant. I felt a strange ache in my chest after all those years of believing nobody saw my value. Someone had. He wanted Adrian to have a partner who challenged him, someone who could help him grow. I swallowed. Then why did none of this happen? Victoria looked away. Because Ethan found out. The pieces started coming together. Ethan didn't just want Adrian gone. He didn't just want my company. He wanted everything. The Whitmore name, the family business, the power. And I had been the easiest target. A poor girl nobody would believe. A girl they could blame. A girl they thought would disappear. What did Ethan do? Victoria's expression hardened. He manipulated everything. She explained that Ethan had created false stories about me. He convinced the family that I was only with Adrian because of his money. He made it seem like I was trying to use the Whitmore name to build my career. He turned everyone against me, and the worst part? It almost worked. I should have listened to Adrian, Victoria whispered. I looked at her. That sentence surprised me. The woman who once looked at me like I was beneath her was finally admitting she was wrong. I was so focused on protecting the family name that I couldn't see who was actually threatening it. I closed the folder. You hurt me. Victoria nodded. I know. You made me feel like I had no value. Her eyes filled with regret. I know. And for years, I believed you were right. She looked at me. But you weren't. I held her gaze. No. I stood up. I wasn't. The next morning, I made a decision. I wasn't going to let Ethan destroy everything. Not because I cared about the Whitmores. Not because I wanted their approval. But because I knew what it felt like to have everything taken away. And I refused to become someone who watched another person lose everything because of someone else's cruelty. I called Adrian. We need to talk. He arrived at my office within an hour. What happened? I placed the documents on the table. His face changed as he read them. Where did you get these? Your mother. He looked surprised. She finally told you? Yes. Silence filled the room. Then Adrian looked at me. I'm sorry. I sighed. Adrian, no. He shook his head. Let me say it. His voice was different. Not desperate, not trying to win me back. Just honest. I spent 3 years wishing I could go back and change that night. He looked down. I thought losing you was the worst thing that ever happened to me. He paused. But watching you become who you are made me realize something. What? You never needed me to become powerful. His eyes met mine. You were always powerful. For the first time in years, I believed he understood. We prepared our final move, not with anger, not with revenge, with proof. Every document, every transaction, every secret agreement, everything Ethan had hidden was brought to light. The world finally saw the truth. The accusations against my company were false. The attacks were planned. The manipulation was real. And Ethan Whitmore had been behind it all. The final confrontation happened at a Whitmore board meeting. Ethan walked into the room with the confidence of someone who believed he had already won. Then he saw me. His expression changed. "Lena?" I smiled. "Ethan." He looked around. "What are you doing here?" I placed a folder on the table. "Ending this." He laughed. "You think you can stop me?" I looked at him calmly. "I already did." The room became silent. The board members looked at the evidence, the financial records, the messages, the proof. For the first time, Ethan looked uncertain. "You have no idea who you're dealing with." I smiled. "Actually, I do." I stepped closer. "I know exactly who you are. A person who spent years destroying others because you were afraid you could never build something yourself." His face hardened. "You think you're better than me?" "No." I shook my head. "I think I'm different from you. Because I built something. I didn't steal it." By the end of the meeting, Ethan lost everything he had spent years trying to gain. His position, his influence, his control. The empire he wanted to take was no longer his, and the person he underestimated was the one who brought him down. Months later, everything changed. Whitmore Industries survived. Not because they deserved saving, because they finally learned the lesson they refused to learn years ago. Success wasn't about wealth. It wasn't about status. It wasn't about looking down on people who had less. Success was about character, and that was something money could never buy. One evening, I returned to the Whitmore mansion. Not because I needed acceptance, not because I wanted approval. I came because I wanted to remember how far I had come. I stood in the same hallway where I once felt like I didn't belong. The same floor where I walked with tears in my eyes. But this time, I stood tall. Adrian walked beside me. "Do you ever think about that night?" I smiled. "Sometimes. Do you regret leaving?" I thought about it, the pain, the heartbreak, the years of struggle. Then I shook my head. "No." He looked surprised. "No?" I smiled. That girl needed to leave. I looked around the mansion. She needed to discover who she was without anyone else's approval. Years ago, they looked at me and saw a poor girl, someone without connections, without money, without power. They thought rejecting me would make me disappear. They thought they were getting rid of a problem. But they were wrong, because every rejection made me stronger. Every closed door pushed me forward. Every person who doubted me gave me another reason to prove myself. I didn't come back to become rich. I didn't come back to make them regret me. I came back because I finally understood my own worth. The girl they rejected became the woman they needed. The girl they underestimated became the woman they respected. The girl they thought had nothing built everything. And that was their biggest mistake.